I'm feeling pretty good about my collection of board games recently, this dragon's hoard of boxes that people are slightly taken aback by when they enter my flat. In fact, you can almost see the exact moment that they realise that I am a weird little goblin and their opinion of me is irreversibly changed. Yeah, you know, I think on balance, like, I'm doing okay. Like, work's been a bit of a nightmare recently, but, you know, at least it's the weekend. How have you board games? But you've got a lot of these. You got a lot of board games. Why? Here's the thing, I'm very happy with the tentpole, chunky games in my collection. There is barely a miss in this bunch.
Not gonna get rid of Ra anytime soon, that one's a classic. Hands of Teutonica, Feast for Odin, Brass Birmingham, those are all just great Euros. Earthborn Rangers is my current campaign game, and it's great. Dune Imperium's a new addition to the collection, and it's nice and fighty for people who like that. My partner likes Anno 1800 and Corrosion, so I can't get rid of those, and I guess I can keep this thing around.
But when I peruse my board game collection and I look at some of my favourite games of all time, I'm somehow still left with a little hint of dissatisfaction. And it's all because of these. The little nooks and crannies of negative space. This shelf is perfect. This one's top tier. This one? Ugh.
And so to address those irregularities, I've been on a mission to find the 5 very best small and shapely boxes to fill those ghastly gaps. And I want to here reinforce that these games were only chosen for their shape and size. This is not a lazily rethemed top 5 great small games feature. That would be crazy. Only a complete chump would try and pull a maneuver like that. We're often big fans of funny games at Shut Up and Sit Down, but often the specific kind of funny that we're after can be a little bit hard to find. We're not that into wacky games with deliberately quirky writing or winks to camera or silly, quirky theming. The kind of humour that we tend to get a kick out of in games is organic and generative, quite dry and a bit absurd without leaning too hard into it. It's the difference between Agricola's Wish for Children only requiring one person and Caverna's more knowingly goofy Cuddle Room. It's Suburbia's old person's home next to a cliff edge being funny until it's also next to Dracula's castle and a UFO. Even in party games, this is true. We loathe Cards Against Humanity's boring, infantile, Lego for jokes approach to humour, but love the very human and creative approach to gags in games like Monica's and Wavelength. We love games where imagination, delivery, and playing in the space are more important to humour than reading aloud a card that says, "a big bum head." Which is all to outline that I think SkyTeam might be the next great example of exactly our kind of humour when it comes to games. Taking a look at this cover, you might think this is a serious, straight-laced game of piloting a plane professionally. But very quickly, the implications of quite how bad you and your co-pilot are at your respective jobs are glaring and hilarious. SkyTeam is a co-op game of 2 players trying to land a plane. Each of you gets a set of dice and a screen to roll them behind, and each round you'll roll those dice and assign them, one at a time, in turns, to these slots on your dashboard to accomplish various plane tasks. Tilting the plane, slowing down, speeding up, extending the wheels or the flaps, or maybe brewing some coffee for your co-pilot. And then, at the end of the round, you're going to check a whole bunch of things, but mostly to see if you've crashed. The difference between the dice you and your friend have put at the top of the board here is how much your plane is going to roll. Too big a difference and you'll tip to an untenable angle and lose. These 2 dice combine their values to see how far you're going to move, either 1, 2, or 3 spaces on this movement track that tucks into the board here. If you go too fast and smack into one of these planes in your way, you also lose. But if you arrive at the airport by aligning your plane with it at the end of a round, congratulations, you're home. But if you're going too fast at this point, you lose. If you haven't flipped all the switches, you lose. If you're at even a slight angle, you lose, you lose, you lose. It's only by cleverly cooperating and aligning your dice perfectly that you'll accomplish all the landing tasks, level out the plane, approach at the right speed, and land perfectly without incident. Which might sound easy, but I've left out a very important detail. You may not communicate with your co-pilot at any point after the dice have been rolled. This means that SkyTeam is a delightful mixture of cooperation and deduction, where you're reading between the lines of every die placed. We both know that going any faster than 8 at this point is going to crash us into these planes, so why did my teammate just put a 6 there? Is it because they want me to clear the way so we can go super fast? Do they want me to start brewing coffee so that I can modify the rest of their dice? Or maybe, just maybe, they've only rolled 6s and we're doomed. It's really, really good. There's a gripping cooperative dice game here at the very core of this, where flashes of communication in between rounds then give way to the randomness of the dice and silently staring at your partner, willing them to do the right thing at the right time. Success in this game feels like you've pulled off a The Mind-style brain meld with your co-pilot, and failure is often so brutal and devastating and sudden that there's tension baked into every single round. But I think SkyTeam is turned from a good co-op game into a great one by 2 key components. First off, we've got all the expansion modules. Now, SkyTeam gives you a whole different raft of airports to try your hand at visiting with their own unique modifiers, but more excitingly, you can graft these extra player boards onto your plane's cockpit, making the challenge even harder. If you thought the game was too easy, how about introducing a traffic die that adds in more planes on the way to your destination? What about turns that force you to be at specific angles at specific times? Maybe there's fuel that slowly drains out of your plane, an intern that needs to be trained, wind that tilts your direction, or most frighteningly of all, a real-time mode where you have only 60 seconds to place out all of your dice. So that's good. It adds longevity, it adds extra depth to an already crunchy and cooperative experience, but the real kicker is that SkyTeam is just so funny. That lack of communication for the bulk of the game leads to these wonderful moments of shrugged shoulders and simmering frustration. You're constantly exasperated with each other, a perfectly watertight plan absolutely falling apart as soon as you see the dice that you've rolled this round. The tension that's baked into this game is, in and of itself, a constant source of chuckles, but it's heightened by the imaginative implications of what you're doing. These dice spaces are simple but evocative for those with even a lick of imagination. One pilot shoveling coffee into another like they're the hungry engine of a steam locomotive, whilst the plane tilts ever further towards a clean 90-degree crash. One player idly clicking on all of these go faster switches whilst their co-pilot looks on in horror because you need to slow down now. It's wonderful stuff. But we're here for a more important reason. How does it fit into your collection?
SkyTeam measures a delectable 18.5 centimeters by 25.5 centimeters with a depth of just 5, making it perfect to go, ooh, just about there.
We got sent basically every single one of Allplay's square small box series in one go. And Big Top might secretly be my favourite of the whole bunch. Not to say that the others aren't good, that there's a couple of good games in there, but the Big Top might have been overlooked because of its very haunted ringmaster on the cover. In this game, you're going to the circus, except not really. You're doing auctions and you're trying to score points. But they are juicy auctions and they are chunky points. In fact, Big Top is really a game of very specific auctions. Each round, the auctioneer draws a card from the deck and adds it to their hand of just one card, and then chooses one of their 2 cards to play into the center of the table. Bids work as you expect, circling the table until everyone's out bar one player who pays the auctioneer for the card and adds it into their tableau in front of them. You keep doing auctions until the end of game card is drawn from your big stack of possible auctionables. And that's the whole game, really, except Big Top has a big twist. Any bids from any player that match the numbers on the cards being auctioned will pop coins from the bank onto the matching slots, and if a card is ever full of coins, it's put in the score pile of whichever player won it, and only completed cards are going to score at the end of the game. The thing is, that doesn't just matter for the cards that are in the center of the table, but also, all of the cards in front of all the players. When you make a bid that matches one of the slots on your quads, you can take coins from your supply and park them on the corresponding slots. Completing these cards gets you their points and will get you your money back, but the money on cards is still able to be spent. So you might start abandoning all of the cards you worked so hard on just to get a stab at that juicy one in the middle that's loaded with currency. So you're trying to bid very specifically in order to make a card juicy, either your own or the one in the center, or actually deliberately avoiding the numbers on the card in question to deter others from going for it. The card in the middle is fluctuating in value depending on the specific bids that have been made on it, but you're also navigating the cards in your own tableau. The current bid is 3, so we should bid 4, but the next player needs to bid 5 for their own card, so maybe we hop up to 5, blocking them and forcing a 6 bid that will fill a slot in that card, and hopefully the bidding might get high enough that this is the round you can bid 12 and finish off this guy. There's a lot of good decisions built on this auction that's constantly fluctuating in value. It's a really clean, really simple, really effective auction game with some incredibly haunted artwork. But don't worry, I know what you really want to know. Does Box fit in collection good?
Big Top's portly proportions of 16 meters by 28 meters make it the perfect game to slot kinda here. But it has so few components that maybe you fancy storing it loose. Just a little bit in there, just a little bit in there. Yeah, lovely.
This next game is a really odd beast. Spectral is a deduction game set inside a haunted house. Each player takes a team of treasure hunters and uses them to peruse the hallways trying to find precious gems. Each turn, you'll place some of your gang next to one of these tiles and get a clue as to the location of the treasure. This card says there's a gem 2 rooms clockwise from this one. This room says there's a gem in the opposite corner of its quadrant. And this one says the gems were inside of you all along. Go and see a doctor. Now, none of these cards are going to say, there is a gem right here. They all point to another tile, like that Spidered Man meme. And at the end of the full game, you'll flip over all the tiles, follow all the clues, place out all the gems, and then divvy them up amongst the treasure hunters who found them. The thing is, you don't just score these gems by finding out where they are, you score them by being present at their location, preferably more so than any other player. The folks you're using to harvest clues are also the way in which you stake a claim on the treasure at the end of the game, where the value of the gem is split evenly between the teams that are next to it. This 12-point gem is here split between 2 different players because 2 sides are covered, one by blue and one by yellow. They'll get 6 points each. But over here, 3 sides are covered, 2 of them by green, 1 of them by yellow, and so it's an uneven split. More goes to green than to yellow. Oftentimes in this game, both players can make a correct deduction, but the person who wins is who put more stake in themselves being right. Other players can dislodge you from a space, but they need to double the number of explorers that you had there. So you have to be dead certain that somewhere is valuable real estate and not just deadly. Curses are where the spice of Spectral is located, because some of these tiles will not show you where a gem is, they will show you where a curse is located. At the end of the game, before you score any of your points, curses will delete any adventurers that are next to that particular tile. And because Spectral's clues are additive, you could very easily have a situation where a tile gets absolutely pounced on by everyone as they realize it's got shed loads of gems on it, but then you get a clue that tells you it is cursed, trapped, evil, and bad, and that all of those players are going to die. Even better, you might realize that there isn't actually a curse on the tile you're bordering, instead they are on the tiles next to yours, which means you've gone from splitting this treasure between 3 people to getting it all to yourself. It's a great dance of deduction and misdirection as you plop your adventurers down in tantalizing locations, using low bids to tempt people into overbidding, and getting bitten in the bum by the curse. Early plays of this can feel a little bit like a lethal version of Storage Wars, where greedy buyers are dead certain that a space is being way overlooked by their fellow adventurers and end up bidding loads on it, only to end up certainly dead. It's also just so quick. Compared to deduction games that the site has recommended in the past, this is refreshingly breezy and lends itself to back-to-back puzzling. But you don't care about how good the game is, whether it's fun or if you should buy it, do you? I know you, I've got your number, you don't care. You're here for one segment, and one segment only, and that segment is called How Does It Shelves?
Spectral has got a kinda rectangle vibe, and you can just put it in kinda like this, and then the other games can go on top. Just cram them, stuff them in. Yeah. Ooh, just right.
Dro Polter is the perfect dumb game. It's the pinnacle of the dumb game genre. It has about 4 rules, and all of them are great. Here's how you play. Every player takes these 5 trinkets into one hand. The top card of the deck is flipped, and players race to drop only the required items using only the hand that the items are in. Once you've dropped those required items, and no more, you can grab the ghost, and the first player to grab that ghost gets 1 point, represented here by these jingly jangly bells. Pop one in your hand with the rest of your trinkets, and you're ready to play another round. 5 bells gets you the win. Here is the catch, though. If you accidentally drop an item that is not listed on the card, that's fine. Pick it back up, along with all your other items, and keep going, trying to drop only the correct items from your hand and grabbing a bell. But if you drop a bell, then that's really bad, because you just lose the bell forever. You don't get to pick it back up. You lose the point. It's gone. Nightmare. And these things are so small and so irritating and so easy to let slip. This means that Dro Polter has a wonderful arc, where players who are merrily blasting through cards, dropping items left, right and centre are picking up tons of these bells and making their hands substantially more difficult to navigate as they jingle and jangle their way through a round. The game of untangling the right object and dispensing it onto the table is sometimes quite simple and sometimes quite tricky, but always complicated by these tiny bell bastards. On top of this, Dro Polter is maybe one of the first games that scales with stickiness. The more you play, the more clammy and sticky your hands become, and items begin adhering to your skin, making them harder to drop, or maybe more secure when you don't want to drop them, anchored to your palms by your own sticky sweat. It's gross. It's really gross. Initially, the shake up your items in 2 clasped hands step of the round seems kind of pointless and silly, and you don't do it. But as the game goes on, it's necessary to unadhere the items from your own skin. Absolutely grotty. It's so disgusting. And also, as bells get added to successful players' hands, this step kind of audibly shows how well any given player is doing. And Pip pointed out that if you drop all of your bells and then you shake your items the next round, you mourn their absence. No more jingle jangling. So sad. It's good. It's not the second coming of Christ or anything, obviously, but it certainly is coming with me to the pub to play with some slightly tipsy adults who want to yell. But where does it fit in the collection? It's the segment you've all been waiting for. Roll the videotape.
Dro Polter measures 2 by 1 oinks, and as such, goes on top of the pile of your canonically good oink games. Right here, these are the good ones. You don't need to worry about any more.
Our final game in this feature is Ito, and I should mention up front that this game is quite hard to find at the moment. You can get import copies from sites like Travel Games, who we've shouted out in the past, but you might be better off just waiting for the reprint that's coming later on, I think from Arcane Wonders. Fact check, Tom, in the future. Fact check if this is true. If I'm feeling rogue, this game might be the first thing that approaches a replacement for Wavelength for me. That chunky game show style board game with the wheel. Ooh, what a treat. That game is a delightful engine for discussion and a wonderful object to bring with you to the pub. But Ito is small and compact and dinky. I don't know which I prefer, but they're both very good. They're filling a similar niche. Let me show you how this one works. First, a category for a round is set by picking a number randomly from 1 to 100. There's a whole bunch of prompts you can pick on here, but there's nothing stopping you from just making up your own and going from there. These prompts take the form of a spectrum. Things that give you goosebumps from 1 to 100. Everyday items that could be a strong weapon. Important things in life. Think like a hero. What's your pose? And make sure to act it out. Each player then gets dealt just 1 card with a number on it from 0 to 100. And your collective goal is to place these cards in order, face down, giving a clue as to where it might fit on that 0 to 100 spectrum. For example, if your spectrum was important things in life, with 0 being not important at all and 100 being crucial to your existence, then 90 would be entertaining and informative board game reviews, and 2 would be shelter. But it's in the middle ground that things get a little bit interesting. What does 40 look like on this spectrum? Maybe companionship and someone to chat to. What does 75 look like? Again, on this spectrum,
Probably a Dice Tower review, maybe. Obviously, Ito is a fantastic engine for sort of whimsical conversations that we really, really like. Like, we like Wavelength, this is incredibly similar to Wavelength. But I think one of the magic tricks that this game pulls is that you can adjust your cards and your clues at any given time, which means that oftentimes you'll have players debating over whether they think that their sandwich is more or less disgusting than the person to their left. They're like, no, my sandwich is really gross. And they're like, are you sure it's gross? Because mine's pretty bad. And they're like, yeah, this one's awful. I don't know what spectrum that would be, like disgusting sandwiches, good to bad, I don't know. I've sort of deliberately left my script for the section on Ito a little bit fluffy, because I think if you see this game, if you see its premise and you're like, yeah, that sounds like the kind of thing that I'll like, then you'll like it, right? If you want a game that's going to offer you just enough systems to push you and your friends into having a heated, ridiculous argument about absolutely nothing, then Ito is exactly the game for you. It's that kind of game. You know this kind of game. You know what you're getting in for. It's one of those. And it's a great one. It's a really good one. It's fun. But where does it fit in the Kallax?
Ito comes in at a lean 7 by yes. And whilst you could put it in this little slot here, where it fits perfectly, you could instead take out the little cards and put them where they belong, in the fridge to set.
And that's the end of this week's episode of Shut Up and Sit Down, where we talked about 5 small games you can put in those weird gaps in your Kallax. But we're not done. We got a bonus game. It's Through the Desert. Alongside all of those small box card games that we got sent by Allplay, we also got sent their new shrunken down version of Reiner Knizia's classic Through the Desert, and it is still great. If you want to know how it plays, you can check out our stream of it that came out quite a long time ago now, but that's the old version of the game. This is a new version. It's exactly the same, it's just a hell of a lot smaller. I didn't want to include it in the sort of main body of this video because I thought the space could be better served by a sort of new and fresh game, but this is still good, still holds up. If you want a great version of a classic, get it. But what if you want even more small box game content? Well, if you donate to Shut Up and Sit Down this month, then you get access to a definitive ranking, a truthful and accurate ranking of every single one of those all-play small box games that have been peering out at me from my cupboard ever since I played them all over a weekend in a slightly exhaustive manner and haven't really known what to do with it since. That's available to anyone who donates to Shut Up and Sit Down via either our website or our Patreon. And you get that alongside a whole host of other bonus bits. This month, me and Emily went head-to-head in the New York Times Connections, Pigpen. Is Peanuts a guy in Peanuts?
Mess horse, dump horse. What is a dump horse?
And you also get access to a full playthrough of Barenpark that me and Matt sat down to, a nice, cozy little viewing experience for when you need to do the dishes. Last month, we had first impressions on Arcs. We've had bonus podcasts about stuff we've been watching and playing recently. It's just a good time. Donate to Shut Up and Sit Down and get a whole host of extra stuff for a meal deal a month. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next week for more videos. Bye-bye.